A very warm good afternoon to all of you. I'm Sakshi, welcoming you on behalf of Solar Quarter and First View Group to Solar Market Outlook Southeast Asia 2023. I take the pleasure to thank our panel members for extending their immense support to organize this event. Here, I would like to make a small announcement. The attendees can post their questions in the Q&A chat box in here, and our speakers will answer those questions at the end of the panel discussion. As the solar energy sector expands globally, Southeast Asia is emerging as one of the fastest growing solar energy markets and as one of the most promising regions, of course. With the most new PV capacity built in the region in 2020, the ASEAN region was in the forefront of this drive. A number of elements that have favored the growth of the solar business in the area, including the rising need for power, the quantity of solar resources in the area, and the favorable renewable related legislation. Additionally, the governments from several nations in the region have stepped up their efforts to guarantee a safe, affordable, and sustainable pathway for the energy industry, including by taking steps to encourage the investment in the solar power generation and the infrastructure. Allow me to introduce the elite panel for today. We have with us Mr. Jack from Christopher and Leon, Mr. Paul from Solis, Mr. Millen from Athene, who will be our moderator, Mr. Cha Sangwan from the Mott McDonald, Mr. Mercury from Goodvi, Mr. Supa from Super Energy Corporation, and Mr. Zander from Burrow. We will be starting. We will be starting with Mr. Zander, who will be introducing all the panel members to us.
Okay, thank you very much. My name is Xander Pierik. I'm briefly taking over from Mr. Milan, who is finding some technical difficulties to connect to this webinar. So I'm the manager of application strategy for Baruch for energy applications in Southeast Asia, India subcontinent, and Australia and New Zealand. So through my fellow panelists, let me ask them to briefly introduce themselves, starting with Mr. Nonti. Mr. Nonti, can you unmute yourself and introduce yourself?
Thank you, Prick. My name is Nonti from Mott McDonald, technical consultancy company. I'm based in Bangkok, in Thailand. I'm the energy sector lead of Thailand and also business development manager of the solar PV portfolio in Southeast Asia. Thank you.
Thank you, Nonti. Over to you, Mr. Supa, for a short introduction.
I'm same nationality with Mr. Nonti. I'm working in super energy in Vietnam. We have around 836.72 megawatts in 9 solar plant, and we have another wind project 50 megawatt, okay, in Yalai. So our plant is along of the middle of Vietnam to the south of Vietnam. So more or less, I will talk about Vietnam, not in Thailand, because we have Mr. Nonti talk on behalf of Thailand already. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Supa. From Thailand over to Malaysia, Mr. Chor, Jack.
Hi everyone. I'm Jack. So I'm a lawyer based in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. I advise clients on the development and financing of infrastructure projects. Right. So for 10 years, I think for the recent 10 years, right, the bulk of it have been made up of, I think, renewable energy projects, mainly solar. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Jack. And last but not least, Mr. Paul.
Hi, Sander. Thank you. Myself is Paul. I'm from Jinong Solis. Jinong is the name of our plant name, our manufacturer name, whereas the Solis inverter refers to our product name. So I work very closely, both together with the sales business development as well as the after sales. So I do see a lot of trend, not only in Malaysia, but the Southeast Asia not only for new project, but the transition of existing for the last 10, 15 years, where they were using central inverter, and then they jump into string inverter, especially when they do the repair phases and all these things. So yeah, I'm glad to be here. Nice, everyone. Yeah.
Welcome, Mr. Paul.
Okay, thank you all for a short introduction. So then we can kick off with the first question. Mr. Jack, let me raise the first question to you, since you're heavily involved in the merger and acquisition landscape and give legal advice for all the mergers and acquisitions. So what is the current state of renewable energy, the renewable energy market in Southeast Asia, and especially in solar? And who are the key participants in the region in the energy market?
Well, I suppose I will start by saying that my jurisdiction of focus, as you may, right, is primarily Malaysia. So we've advised on plants in Vietnam as well, a couple of them, not many, right? But regionally, I suppose, there are only a couple of active markets, right? So Malaysia, Thailand, Vietnam, Philippines. I mean Singapore, but Singapore is a very small, smaller location, right? I think the current state is such that, every country, as I understand it, every country is progressing at different speeds, right? So for instance, Malaysia, there's not much of M&A activity, right? A lot of development activity, right? Not much of M&A activity because of the government regulations, which makes it slightly more difficult for mergers and acquisitions to take place. Right? Contrast that with, for example, Vietnam, right? I think there's a more active market there, right? I think Thailand has generally liberalized their market, and Philippines, right? They've recently opened it to 100% foreign involvement. Hi, Milan. Right.
Hi, Jack. Hi, guys. I'm sorry.
Hello, Milan.
Yes,
so Jack, please continue, and then after your question, I will hand over the moderatorship to Milan.
Sure. So I suppose every region is progressing at different levels. The recent 2 years, right, has been not 2, 10 maybe, right? But in recent 2 years, right, there's been a huge jump in installed capacity. I think maybe because of pandemic as well, because of ESG, because of there's been this craze where everyone's going around building projects, buying projects. But I actually feel that things may, it's not matured, right? There's plenty of room to grow, right? But I think a lot of governments are actually rethinking policies. At least that's where I'm seeing it, right? From where I'm based in Malaysia, KL, right? I think there's been talk amongst the industry that things are moving slower than we expect it to, right? Sort of wait and see, right? I think people are also looking at Vietnam, for instance, or Australia, right, where there are grid issues, when people are introducing too many projects in a short span of time. I think growth is actually pretty steady, right? It's not quick at all, right? It could be quicker, but I think a lot of it is to do with government policies, incentives, right, restrictions, and I think hesitance of players to come into to this part of the world. I think a lot of the deep-pocketed investors are always foreign investors, and a lot of the time, they have a certain mindset, right, structure in mind. But when you come to emerging markets, there's a lot of structuring around which you'll have to adapt to.
Thank you, Jack. So Milan, welcome on board. Can I hand over the moderatorship to you?
Hi, Alexander. Hi. Thanks. Have I missed a lot? I know Jack, and I've heard the last part of his intro, and
no, we just started.
Perfect. Great. So I guess, Xander, I'm passing it back to you then.
Okay. Thank you very much. So in Borouge, we are a bit more upstream in the process. We are a petrochemical company, so we are producing advanced polymers for the energy industry, thinking about power cable systems, fiber optic cables, but also the polymers which are used for PV panels, the layers which we call the encapsulants, but also the separators in the batteries and the capacitors. So we are a bit more upstream in the solar market, but however still very important and working on the innovations for the next coming years. So Southeast Asia, about 35 gigawatts of solar capacity has been generated, and with the current policies, it allows to go to about 100 gigawatts in 2030, divided over 20% through rooftop, 80% floating solar in combination with land solar. So the developments are certainly ongoing with some good enablers throughout the whole region. We've seen Vietnam at the forefront already, but expected to slow down a bit due to lower feed-in tariffs that are coming up. But different countries are taking over: Malaysia, Thailand, Philippines, where we are expecting some large growth on solar generation, and also the Electricity Market Authority in Singapore has announced a 4 gigawatt import license tender, and that is also likely going to trigger more demand for solar deployment in the region. Over to you, Milan.
Awesome, thank you. Super.
I want to talk about in Vietnam in general. They have installed capacity around 36 gigawatt. Okay, for the wind, for the coal around 31 gigawatt, and for gas turbine around 9 gigawatt. Wind now only 0.5 gigawatt is mean 536 megawatt in COD, and for solar around 16 megawatt in total. However, for the solar project right now, they have, I think they have around 12 gigawatt, not in COD yet. The Vietnamese government plan to accept the new solar plan in 2030. That make the investor have to wait for another 7 years. That's the big issue, and many of investors try to force government to accept for the plan that they already built. So that is a big headache. Government also issue to pay only half of the price that they commit to pay. From 7 cents will be allowed 3 or 4 cents. So that is all from solar in Vietnam. For solar is not kind of the good business for the selling to IPP or to government, but they still have the room for the PPA that we can sign directly with the customer. So that the thing not yet to discuss now in Vietnam. It's just only the tentative plan that government will allow to use the wheeling scheme, but we don't know when it happened. Okay, that for summary from my side in Vietnam at the beginning. Thank you.
Great. Not very optimistic, but that's one way. Okay. Nanti. Hi.
Thank you so much. Hi, Milan. Yeah, I mean, when we are talking about what is the current state of renewable energy market in Southeast Asia, I mean, from the technical point of view, because I'm coming from the technical consultant aspect, so we expect the solar PV market will be active again for this year and in a number of countries. I mean, our panelists also touched a little bit on the Philippines, a little bit on Vietnam. One of the country mm, that we have to mention is Thailand. I mean, renewable energy market in Thailand is waking up again since the previous feed-in tariff and other programs for over 5 years. So we are talking about the medium-term pipeline of the solar PV related projects around 3 gigawatts, another 1.5 gigawatt for the wind, and around 300 megawatt for the biogas. This following the recently announced 5 gigawatt renewable energy market, and this for the projects to um, achieve the COD within 2025 and up to 2030. and we will see a lot of movement on the projects development from this year onwards in Thailand. There will be a couple of countries that worth highlighting as well. I will not go one by one, but for example, like in the Philippines, our panelist just mentioned on the the change in the regulations end of last year, allowing 100% of the foreign capital participation in renewable energy market, and therefore we would expect international players to keen and jump into the Philippines renewable energy market. And also in the Philippines, the there is open in the quota to develop the floating solar projects in Laguna Bay, around um, 2,000 hectares of the land available for the developers to develop. And now there will be around I think 1.3 gigawatt capacity of floating solar PV secure to develop the floating over that land already. Another country I would like to highlight is Indonesia. To be honest, I mean, we anticipate to see the announcement from PLN, the grid utility, for the development of the hybrid solar PV and energy storage system to replace the diesel generator across Indonesia within this year. And you will see a number of participation and key movement in Malaysia, Indonesia market. Last but not least, I mean, Singapore. I think everyone are aware of the policy to import the power from other countries to Singapore. That will be another opportunity and area where the developers planning to export the power from other countries through HVDC subsea cable to Singapore. So those are another promising area that we are looking at for this year. Those are the primary market. There will be another set of secondary market where for many countries everyone are aware of the acquisitions of the existing solar PV assets from one party to another parties, and that activity happens across Southeast Asia regions. Yeah, that's my part of view. Yeah.
Thank you, Kudanti. I also know the good news in Thailand about you have more solar after stop for a long time.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, great. Thank you, Nanti. We're going to talk a little bit about this later. I have some questions to follow up with. But first, Hugh, are you here?
Yes, Sander.
Good morning, depending on where you are.
Yeah, I'm in Kuala Lumpur now.
Good morning.
Morning. So the same goes for Malaysia as well. We are still in the 800 megawatt allocation under the net metering energy. We see not only in Malaysia with this kind of policy that drive, only as you notice you follow the news in Malaysia and Singapore itself, our G2G, government to government, just signed some agreement, where we allow both sides, whether it's developer, EPC, contractors, or both Malaysia and Indonesia to cooperate each other. So which means you will see more and more investor coming from Singapore into Malaysia in those especially PPA projects, power purchase agreement project, that will be implemented. As you know, the opportunity is still very large on those factory and manufacturing that has a plenty rooftop. And the other way around, the Malaysian has had plenty of contractors, EPC, that they can actually participate in some of the project initiated by the Singapore government. So we see a very healthy move, both from the government level as well as from the private institution. Yeah.
Great, perfect. I mean, we have we're done with the introductions. Congratulations. I guess we're quite set on this panel in terms of geographies, which is very nice. We have manufacturers, EPCs, developers. Perfect. I will make it very quick with my own introduction. I am a co-founder of iTeen, which is a investment platform that we have started just a few months ago, and it's a joint venture of 4 partners. I do agree with Nonti that there is a lot of consolidation happening, and this is exactly the reason why we're doing what we're doing. And we are also having a lot of M&A agenda on our pipeline. So yeah, so this is happening. I completely agree, and this is the natural reason for why we have a team. I'm not going to talk too much about this because my role is going to be a little bit more passive here on this panel. But I wanted to start with a very high-level question on, and you can pick your core markets and more or less talk about the countries where you have experience. But very high-level question on what is going to happen in 2023 in both segments, utility scale and rooftop, just as an overview based on the current policies or the market trends. If you can conclude with what numbers as an installation base we could expect, that will also be very highly appreciated. So yeah, shall we start with Hugh in Malaysia?
Milan, you were saying that in terms of the figures, both separated into like industrial, utility. Is that what you are meaning?
Correct.
Yes. For Malaysia itself, we are seeing 70% on the commercial and industrial. They will still be the dominant market space. That is, that everyone rush to it, both by the local company as well as the foreign company that invested here. The second would be followed by the residential and the small commercial. So Malaysia, in a way, our tariff is still not on the highest band among the Southeast Asia. That's why the transition we are still facing a challenge from traditional, the local grid operator, in which they are still offering a very low tariff rate. However, the current NEM, the NEM program, the Net Energy Metering Program, has actually boosted the demand for it as well, because the sellback rate to the local grid operator is actually helps the ROI of each user to goes to as low as 5 years or even below, depending on the size of their system. So we are talking about on average, if I look at the install capacity, sometimes why do we have the figure is because every customer that install, they will register in a monitoring system, and we can see from our dashboard what sort of customers, how large is the system. On average per month, we are talking about one brand, for example, ourselves is Solis. We also have other players as well. Per brand, we can say that we have about 50 to 80 residential install per month for one single brand. If you're talking about there is 4 or 5 major brands, you take the multiplication, and you can see the rate is actually growing quite healthy. On top of that, we also see the market is very excited, where a new player, usually the small and the mediums, from installer, contractor, from the consultant, they are joining the band as well. And most of them, they actually transition from electrical construction company and then transition into this solar renewable. So I would say this is the figure that that we have, what is going on. Yeah.
Great. Can I check how is the first pilot VPPA going? I think it's not a secret. It became obvious to everyone who is involved that this first round was structured around a couple of companies to their own benefit, so that other participants cannot participate. Have those 2 companies that basically the whole thing was structured around them, have they actually done some progress on it? Is there any actual PPAs being signed and executed?
I think people know you mentioned which company. They always get the quota to do it, but they don't deliver. To be honest, till today, they have not really signed any. They have not even done their financial closing, even though they are holding 100 megawatt quota. And sad to say, yes, not only that they delay, there is even not an indication when they make a public announcement in the in the stock market. They have compulsory to make announcement. They did not even mention an anticipated date of where are they going to do their financial closing for that 100 megawatt. So
actually, if I may just add, right? I mean, so I'm a lawyer. I'm based in KL as well, right? On VPPA, actually, we cannot entirely blame those companies for the simple reason that the VPPA program has not closed, right? So it's still open for submissions, right? I mean, from what I hear, the idea is that they need to close it because there's a single closing date in March. So it was supposed to be today, actually, the closing date, right, for submissions, but they've extended it to March, right? From what I hear, it's supposed to be a single closing. They close, then everyone gets awarded, right? And from what I hear, I mean, from what I know as well, I think those people, if they really have got the program, they can actually pull it off, right? I'm actually optimistic. I know where you're coming from, Paul, right? Most of these direct award programs, I mean, if you look at LSS4, right, half of them at least, right, are just zombie projects, right? They cannot get financing, they cannot build. But I'm actually optimistic for these projects, right? But I mean, speaking of the pilot program VPPA, Malaysia, I think we'll always take baby steps. So I mean, we'll look at what Thailand does, we look at what Vietnam does, we look at what everyone else does, and then we will sort of do half of it and then see how it goes, right? Sort of slow and steady. We try not to rock the boat, kind of approach. I think that's what this year will be.
Indeed.
So, Jack, regardless whether the timeline given to the developers was sufficient or not, which I still disagree, and this is not the way to structure it. You give 2 months extension to people that have already submitted documents, but 80% of the investors that I know have not submitted because the initial timeline was just too short. So if you have successfully eliminated the entire market and you have given the green light to two local companies, extending the timeline is only in the favor of the 2 local companies. That's all. So let's be clear about it. Apart from that, the way it is structured, because VPPA in Malaysia will be important for the entire region, what is happening right now is that we have significant movement from MNCs, large multinational corporates who are targeting net zero by 2025 or 2030. And so the presence of those in Southeast Asia is significant. Starting from Singapore back in the years where there is no MNCs, or at least no manufacturing ones, Malaysia has a little bit more potential in this. Malaysia has a little bit more manufacturing. And successful implementation of this program will be very important for the entire region. Vietnam, which is the biggest place for virtual PPAs or direct PPAs, can definitely learn a lesson and try to accelerate its delayed for over five years now program. So again, has this been a successful pilot, or is there anything that you guys feel can be done better?
Okay. I don't know if there are any energy commission or government, sort of officers on this call, but so I better watch, be careful.
Yeah, better they are. No, better they are, and better don't be careful, because being careful is why things are not moving.
No, absolutely, and I think I've always actually made clear that we need more. I think it's at the end of the day, it comes down to policies. It's just policies and robust policies and guidelines. In the sense that you have to be clear. You cannot say discretion of the authority, or up to you. That sort of very unclear language, right? I think the parameters for bidding for a successful plan, because all of these will be tender rounds, right? You have to be absolutely clear how can someone reach it, right? At the moment, I think there's too much discretion being allowed, right? And for the authorities to sort of decide. And I think the main problem is also foreign involvement, right? There's a huge push, right, by certain sectors to say, let's limit foreign involvement. So Malaysia power projects, right, theoretically speaking, all of them must be majority controlled by Malaysians, right? I think that's a major drawback in Malaysia, right? Structuring around is difficult, financing is difficult, right? I think, let's see how that goes.
Okay, hopefully the second round will be a little bit better, at least in terms of timeline. I guess in terms of regulations, it's quite okay from what I've seen. I think again, it's very important for the entire region. I guess Richard is here. Richard, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Mr. Milan. I'm
Quick
sorry.
intro, please. You're
I'm
very late.
sorry. Yeah. I think it's a 3 p.m. Indonesian local time. Okay, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
Hello.
please, quick intro,
Yeah.
and we move on.
Yeah, I'm Indonesia country manager for the Goodwe, in Indonesia, and then actually we are developing the project also, CNI and residential, also developing the new distributor in this region. Currently for the I mean currently in the Indonesia, still is restricted, for the PV. It's about 15% of installed capacity from the grid. So it means that when the grid is 10,000, you only allowed to install around 1,500, is 1.5 megawatt. So it's a very small capacity. And then until now, there's no new policy whether the grid or the government need to change. But it's some issue. It's a public hearing in January that there will be some change. Some change that only for the self consumption in our country. That's all I can share with you all. Thank you.
Okay. Since we're on the Indonesia topic, someone else also mentioned Indonesia in the introductions. From my point of view, there is no market in Indonesia. I mean, compared to the potential, it's peanuts. It's nothing. What is the progress in PLN? I think the more I stopped looking at Indonesia for a very long time now because it's just nonsense. But from the people that I speak to, there must be it's a very, very deep problem in terms of the whole organization setup and basically a whole entire generation of leaders on a political level and on PLN level must change in order for the renewable energy industry to pick up. And so the common conclusion is that the coal power lobby is just too strong. Realistically speaking, can we expect something to happen in the short term in Indonesia in terms of policy change or any other market drive that will accelerate the so-called sleeping giant, which has been sleeping for decades now?
Yeah, I don't think so, Mr. Milan, because this thing already happened since last year until this year, and there's no any sufficient change for the policy from the government. And then from the PLN side, either they also develop their business through the renewable energy, mostly in the PV sector. Yeah, they develop, and then they now I think I read that they already appoint Icon Plus. Icon Plus is a local company, under PLN, and then this local company will develop and sell the electricity to the industrial and commercial sector. Now maybe I think that
from one pocket to the other.
Sorry, pardon.
From one pocket to the other.
Yeah, from one pocket to the other. And then another thing is residential. I think residential we still can go ahead, because it's a zero export. Maybe as not as attractive like few years ago that PLN will give you some subsidize or maybe a return that you can export the electricity to the grid. But nowadays you can use it only for your self-consumption, but still okay, I think. So there's some people in our region in Indonesia still want to install with the ROI around 4 until 5 years. And I think this is still attractive in the residential part. And then another thing, maybe we can consider about I can say energy storage, right? Energy storage with the CNI. Okay, let's say we leave behind, but energy storage Indonesia is a multi-island company, multi-island country, I can say. Right, so many island at here, and then there are so many island, no PLN at there, and then no grid. So we maybe can go to tier and then develop for the backup storage. For example, like mining. The first is mining, and then the second one is a shipyard company. And then there's near Batam, there's a Tanjung Balai Karimun, and then Sulawesi area. There's no PLN, no grid. Maybe this is our market for now. Here, what I can say to you, Mr. Milan, and other attendees at here, panelists.
Thanks, Richard. Very, very, yeah, it is what it is, right? We can just do what we can, but essentially there is a huge potential and there is nothing happening. And so I guess this is why just Indonesia is really not on the agenda for too many people anymore. In fact, even the big guys are struggling with getting their projects done. And there is stranded projects and there is nothing. Anyway, that's about Indonesia. I think Supa mentioned that Supa or Nonti, I'm sorry, I'm not sure, mentioned that in Thailand we're going to expect about 1.5 gigawatt of new installations thanks to the new program that is being rolled out. And this, of course, is probably good news for everyone that has not read the program in detail. Because as everything else, the devil is in the details. How is this going to work out with the limitation of about 200 megawatt per year and having this overabundance of players, very strong local Thai, and too many foreign players in the market? So how do you think this whole program will play out? And essentially we have solar and storage as two separate arms, and differentiate feed-in tariffs. How attractive is this? And yeah, how successful will it be?
Sure. Thank you so much, Milan. I can add quite a number of insight as well. I mean, we have been working with a couple developers during the pre-feasibility stage techno-economics optimizations. If we are narrowing this down to solar PV and hybrid solar and energy storage systems, you will see that, I mean, it is really critical and very important for this round of renewable energy market in Thailand to the extent that each developer have to be very precise and confident on sizings of the solar PV and energy storage system. Why I'm saying this? This is because of the feed-in tariff level to be obtained is not that much attractive. I mean, we are talking about around 7 cents, 8 cents of the solar PV hybrid with energy storage system, and it's very challenging for some projects if not carefully sizing. And also something new that announced by the governmental sector is that, I mean, for the solar PV projects alone, the standalone solar projects, developers can go with the non-firm scheme, which means that whatever the projects can produce can be sold to the grid. But if you are going to decide to bid with the hybrid solar and energy storage systems, you will have to go with what we call partial firms program, which means you have to ensure that for a certain period of time in the day, you have to feed the electricity at the constant level. And to comply with that, yes, you will need to install the energy storage system. And of course, for the purpose of techno-economic optimizations, every developers try to lean or minimize the use of energy storage as much as possible. Otherwise, it will impact to the capital expenditure of the projects. So it's pretty challenging, but again, it doesn't mean it's not achievable. I mean, we have been discussing with a couple of EPC contractor as well, and all the EPC contractors active in the market have to adapt themselves to be competitive in the market. So we are talking about lower feed-in tariff comparing with the previous round of the feed-in tariff program. And one of the factors that EPC contractors have to survive in the market is to reduce their premium in order to be competitive with other EPC contractors as well. And another challenge gonna be on PV module price and energy storage price. If we talk about the modules and battery price last 3 or 4 years, you may expect significant decrease in the price itself. But given the supply demand aspects, given the demand of the solar PV modules and energy storage systems. So the price somehow isn't that decreased, at least last year, right? I mean, energy storage system price still maintain the same or slightly higher, the same for the PV modules, and therefore we are talking about some uncertainties in the price that may affect to the feasibility of the projects. So that are some things we have to developers have to carefully consider. In terms of the participants in this round, I agree that most of the developers are local Thai companies, and the announcement for this program will be the end of March or the beginning of April. So we'll know the outcome, who gonna be qualified to develop these projects. Yeah.
Add a
Yeah,
little bit on Kun Nanti. Can I, Milan, talk a little bit?
please,
You're
please.
right. Talk about the battery energy storage system. Super is a one of investor we made in the beginning of this year. I mean last month for 14 megawatt, or in total about 136 megawatt hour. And to do that, because of Kunoti is right, we have agreeable from the supplier before, the Ukraine and Russian war. So the
Mm.
price, everything agreed nearly two and a half years ago that can put in around 8.5 cent. But I don't think that we can do it now in this year and next year because of the battery price. It coming up, and that talk about the super project in Thailand and talk about the super in Vietnam, about the solar rooftop. And I mentioned from the beginning, it's only from private to private, because EVN or electricity of Vietnam not allowed to buy any more from the private, because they are full in the transmission line. And everyone also know transmission line in Vietnam is have a lot of power curtailment in the middle and in the south. The power grid cannot bear any more about more power. Then just only to finish about the wind project in this year and next year, I think they will stop for a while about the new power from renewable energy to put in the system. So that all will about Vietnam. Maybe will like relax for the moment, and until end of this year we can see how it's going on next year. Okay. So to add up together with Kudonti, you may know about this. Thank you.
Thank you, ครับ คุณสุภา
And apart from that, how is the rooftop segment gonna look like this year?
Yeah.
This is separate from any policies. I think this market is very, very stable. In the last few years, we see more or less very stable installation numbers. The usual suspects are installing. I think the tier 1 customers are done. Now we're looking at a lot of CNI happening with tier 2 companies. It's still happening. I see it. How does this look like in terms of financials? Because this is also a very competitive market from the economical standpoint. We have very competitive discount rates, and with the rising cost of procurement, that's also not gonna play out nicely. What is your predictions there?
Well, I can answer this one first, at least for Thailand sector. So the rooftop scale and cyanide project type still pretty active and pretty stable as it is for the last 2 or 3 years. We are talking about not a small scale. Of course, that if we are looking into one particular rooftop assets, the scale is pretty small, but majority of the players, developers, and investors in Thailand, we are talking about over 100 assets. So we are talking about the economies of scale of the projects, and therefore it doesn't have been impact from the economic factor much comparing with the grammar aspect. It's pretty much the same risk level, and the market is pretty active in the way not just only having the new private PPA between the host building and the developer itself, but we also have seen quite significant transaction in terms of the acquisitions at the corporate level or at the asset level from one hand to another hand, and we are talking not just about 100 rooftops projects. We are talking about like 1,000 rooftop scale in the acquisition process as of this period of time in Thailand. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Super, do you want to add something? Not sure Super Energy is doing any rooftops.
Yeah, we have only small project about the rooftop in Vietnam. Actually, for Vietnam, I would suggest only for the owner of the rooftop, they want to have self-consumption, because it's very difficult for to do the solar rooftop at the investor, because the price of electricity bill, you know how much it's around 6 or 7 cents. That selling to people is invalid, is quite low compared to other country in Southeast Asia. And another issue I mentioned about the grid line, national grid is very full. Even we are talking about to sell from the one solar plant to the like Sony, Apple, or Samsung. They want to have the green energy. We still cannot see what the right solution at the moment. Thank you.
Okay, you mentioned Vietnam. Let's move there. In fact, Vietnam is way overdue because it was supposed to be topic number one, but it's not there at the moment.
No, not at all.
Correct. So it's not there now. There are a lot of hopes. I think that's the right word. That things may improve, but there are not much indications of improvement. The policies are delayed. The PDPA draft doesn't show much appreciation to solar. It's a lot more towards wind. EVN is not really proactively connecting or issuing allowance for newly connected rooftop projects in a couple of provinces. So yeah, Vietnam is pretty much in a freeze, and it used to be by far the biggest market, and in terms of macroeconomic conditions, it's really the biggest market in Southeast Asia, or can be for solar. So what are the expectations? And please feel free everyone to comment here. I think Xander as well. What are the expectations on this year's market outlook? I suppose DPPA is probably not gonna be a case this year again, and we're just gonna look at a few rooftop stuff going on here and there. What is your expectations?
I suppose for Malaysia, right? Let me just go on Malaysia. I mean, you're right. The government has recently increased the tariffs for industrial, right, customers, commercial and industrial customers. So there will be actually a sort of renewed focus on rooftop projects, right? So net energy metering or self-consumption. So self-consumption is similar to net energy metering. The only difference is you don't sell power back to the grid. But I think for VPPA, everyone is looking for, you're right, so closing is in March, right? They will take probably 6 months to assess who gets awarded, right? So we'll know closer towards end of Q4 as to, which projects will go ahead. Right? I think that's what we are sort of looking out for, right? So some players in the industry are sort of hoping, right, that there will be a new large-scale solar tender round, right? I mean, personally, I don't think that will be the case, right? Because there's already the VPPA. Doesn't seem, quite efficient to have another similar round to conflict with that. But you're right. I mean, that's what we are, left with, at least, for this year. Right, but I suppose my question to you, Milan, right, is one of curiosity as well. I mean, since you are you are a platform, right, that matches deals, I suppose, and does your own deals as well. I mean, what do you see in Malaysia? I mean, because there are all these restrictions as to foreign involvement, right, transfer of shares. I mean, I know people try to structure around it. I mean, we've been involved in sort of a few people who want to do that. What is your view on your take on Malaysia, right? What's activity going to look like?
Yeah, we're not a platform as in an IT platform that basically sells.
I know. You're like an investment bank, so to speak, right?
Malaysia is not giving any indication of getting into any direction different from having a very restricted cap on installations. And I'm not sure that this is necessarily bad, because the grid in Malaysia is a huge bottleneck, and they are controlling this very, very precisely by having TNB involved in every stage of the vertical in the entire chain. So honestly, my personal opinion is that Malaysia will become something pretty much like what Thailand is. The policies will be extremely limited to some certain capacity. In fact, even the private PPAs will be limited to a certain capacity, so that industrial and commercial customers are mostly taken care of TNB, or the liberalization there is going to be rather gradual. So I guess I do not expect any surprises in Malaysia. But I also wanted to touch base on Vietnam, because that's again really something that can exponentially grow if finally the policy comes in place. I think Super is the most interested in this, but anyone else, please feel free to comment on Vietnam as well.
I think for me, I already mentioned clearly, for solar project in Vietnam will be freeze at the moment. So until 2030, the government will allow to sell more. However, they also open for the loan for discussion. The price is 3 or 4 cents. I'm not sure that the investor gonna sell it to the grid of EVN or not. That's the issue. Thank you.
What is it, 3 to 4 cents?
Around 3 or 4 cents. It depends on, because it fit with the Vietnamese dong, not yet to refer to US cent. So it's very quiet.
If you refer to the transition or the so-called transitional projects, those that are not connected, it plays out to around 5 cents, 5 plus.
Something, because that's why I mentioned depend on Vietnamese dong. You can go.
Correct. So that's another issue. I mean, the currency is a whole separate issue. But you're right that with this particular level of revenue, there's just too much risk that doesn't justify the returns, and it's just not
correct. And don't forget about interest rate in Vietnam. And from the bank is allowed more than 10 or 11 or 12%.
Well, I'm sure you have access to Thai financing as well, so that probably is not that much of an issue for you. But yes, you're right. Local financing makes things impossible.
Correct.
Yeah. So again, I think overall, if I can summarize, is that we have
Milan, may I jump in
Sander,
on the
please.
Vietnam topic as well? So another important element is the grid stability of EVN and overloading of the grid. The demand is growing so quickly in Vietnam that EVN needs to expand their network in a very fast pace in order to accommodate all the connections from solar but also wind to the network. That in combination with the low feed-in tariff of around 5 cents, which has been reduced from 7 to 5, makes it very difficult to really invest in solar farms at the moment. And there's still around, I believe there's around 3 gigawatts of utility scale solar farms that still needs to be tapped into EVN's network. So as you mentioned already, it's pretty frozen at the moment. And hopefully PDP 8, when it finally comes on, we will see some positive changes.
Yeah.
Correct, Sander. Thank. Yeah, you're right.
From your mouth to God's ears, we used to say where I come from. Okay, I guess one last question to Richard. What is the situation on the supply chain? We heard a couple of times that pricing is not favorable to the industry. What is the situation in the inverters market, and how can we rely on price decline anytime soon?
Yeah, I think for now on, there's for inverter is quite stable. Yeah, Mr. Milan, thank you for the question. For the inverter is stable, and then for the panel price, as that mentioned by our panelists, that the trend is lower, right? It's going decrease year by year. And then the supply chain, from now on, I think there's a not very, it's okay and still no issue, but the mostly is from the regulation and policy. But for this year, I see the market outlook is it should be the self consumption for CNI, also for the residential, just the same, because the PLN will have no any feed-in tariff. So it will be a self-consumption. For the factory, still is attractive, because I just heard from my developer friend that there's a Q1 is a 20 megawatt, maybe 20 megawatt is from one manufacturer from panel. Yeah, they already get the tender in industrial area, and then the Q2 there's a tendering around 20 megawatt also in the manufacturer, in the industry, I mean CNI. And then for the residential, still going. Yeah, what at least you have a limiter, right? It's a zero export. You don't export your you install the power limiter, everything is okay and still can go. This is what I can share with you. Thank you.
Do you think this 20 megawatt projects will happen?
Sorry, you are muted.
Do you think this 20 megawatt projects will happen?
Yeah, because not happen. It's already done, and then the PO already released, Mr. Milan, by Q1.
Okay. All right, that's good. That's very good news. Very good news. Okay, Priyanshi, sorry, Sakshi, I'm not sure whether we have any questions.
Oh, we do, sir. A very big thank you to all the panelists here. Now we will be screening some questions. There you go. Mr. Milan, who do you think is the right person to answer this question?
The right person can pick themselves. I'm not sure who has most experience when quoting.
I can start.
Maybe Supra? Nanti?
All right. Yeah, I can initially address on these questions. The short answer is yes. We are expecting to see much more floating solar PV projects development in Southeast Asia regions. This follows the successful deployment of the floating solar PV projects in other regions, not just only in outside Asia, but also in Northeast Asia. When I say Northeast Asia, it means Japan, Taiwan, and also in Korea. So we have seen a successful utility scale projects happen in those three regions. Some example is like we have been working with 181 megawatt floating solar projects over sea water in Taiwan, and it's one of the example that the current state of floating solar PV technology is becoming more mature comparing with the last 5 years, and therefore developers tends to keen to explore and pushing the development of floating solar PV projects even in the extreme environmental conditions. And the reasons behind floating solar PV projects, two key benefits. One is floating solar PV technologies is a good example to maximize the land utilizations. This really be the case for the countries or the regions with limited terrain or limited land area. So we have seen the floating solar PV projects in Indonesia. We will we will witness the utility scale floating solar PV projects in the Philippines soon in the Laguna Bay. And the second key benefits of floating solar PV projects when comparing with the conventional ground mount project is the water cooling effect, which will help increasing the efficiency of the PV modules. So that is another key benefit that may attract the developers to invest into the floating solar PV projects. I will not touch on the key considerations, but just to know that if considering exploring the development of the floating solar PV projects, we have to take more serious on the design considerations against the site environmental conditions to make sure that the projects can be reliable over the long term. That is the additional aspects we have to consider for the floating solar projects. Yeah, that the view from me.
Yeah, nothing to add that. I think it's a very good explanation about the advantages for floating solar. And the market is really taking off. In Singapore, we have seen 60 megawatt being added on stream in the Tengay reservoir. In Laos, 200 megawatt is under construction with EDF. Philippines is coming. There are some FEED studies going on in Batam, Indonesia, together with Sunseap. So it's really gaining traction with a significant double-digit growth rate in Southeast Asia, just like in India. And so this is mostly on fresh water reservoirs, water that's standing still. And now also in Singapore, the first trials are ongoing with truly going offshore with a solution from Sun Ocean, where the solar farm will be installed a few kilometers out of the coast and then connected with a submarine cable to the shore. And of course, the weather conditions are more severe the further you go offshore. So you need a different type of technical design. But yeah, it's growing significantly. Yeah.
Agree.
Right, great. For the next question.
I'll take this. This question entails no answer because there is no feed-in tariffs in rooftop solar anywhere in Southeast Asia. Whether a small scale investor can participate, yes, they can, but there is no.
I'm so sorry. He's in another meeting, so he will join a little bit later.
There is no real feed-in tariff for that. So yeah. I guess there is one more question about rooftop solar in India.
Right, just screening that.
Yeah, so again, India really not so much Southeast Asia from a geographical standpoint. I'm not sure whether anyone wants to take this question.
All right. With this, I believe we have come to the end of the session. I would like to thank the audience and panelists, and a very special thanks to Mr. Milan for superbly managing the session. Big shout out to our attendees for extending their time and support for the event, and a very special thanks to all the panelists once again for the immense support to organize this event. We promise to be back with more exciting sessions soon, and the floor is now open for networking. Thank you, everyone.
โอเคขอบคุณครับขอบคุณ thank you Mr. Sakshi thank everyone
Yeah,
Thank you. Thank you,
Mr. Milan and everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good day. Bye bye.